Thanks for the kind invitation. Thanks for this nice introduction. I had only one disappointment, and you said between hammer and. I thought it would be between hammer and sickle or whatever. As an old leftist, no? Also, the only thing that disturbed me in this kind of introduction is all the one of the most provocative thinkers and so on. Like, it's very difficult for me to identify myself to that, with that. Like, you construct a certain place, and I was almost tempted to look back, like, who is the guy? Now, it's nice that you mentioned that wound, because I think that you now generated that wound in me, the wound of humanity, because that wound is the gap between me in my immediate stupidity and that image of me, like who is that inventive thinker and so on. Of course, we in psychoanalysis have a name for this wound, no? It's called symbolic castration. So thanks for a castrating experience. Okay. Okay, so now, okay, enough of jokes. I already warned people that I tend to speak too long, so I will simply go on trying to read your body language, no, and, or some gentle hints. Okay, since this is visual arts and so on department, let me begin with two recent Hollywood productions which were released to mark the 5th anniversary of September 11th. Paul Greengrass's United 93, sorry, and Oliver Stone's World Trade Center. Now, the first thing that strikes the eye is that both films try to be as anti-Hollywood as possible. Both focus on the courage of ordinary people. No glamorous stars, no special effects, no big heroic gestures, just, as they put it, a terse, realistic depiction of ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. However, I claim this very touch of authenticity raises some disturbing questions. The first thing that one cannot but note is how both films tell the story of an exception. United 93 is about the only one of the 4 kidnapped planes in which the terrorists failed, which did hit its destination. World Trade Center tells the story of the 2 of those 20 or so policemen, firemen who were saved from the ruins. The disaster is thus turned into a kind of triumph, most notably in United 93, where the passengers revolted. Now, a comparison with Spielberg's Schindler's List is instructive here. Although I consider Schindler's List a total artistic and political failure, nonetheless, I think that the idea to choose Schindler, why a failure? I shouldn't get lost in this, but we can debate this later. I think that the problem is that Spielberg has one underlying fundamental motive which he repeats through practically all of his films. It's this obsession with father, a failed father who ultimately recaptures, regains his proper paternal authority. Take the one before the last one, War of the Worlds. It's not really about aliens, it's about Tom Cruise developing into a proper father. And this gives us a key to practically all of them, I claim. Jurassic Park is really about Sam Neill, bad father, dismissing the 2 small kids, retain authority. Schindler's List, it's about Schindler turning from the one who financially exploits, sees the opportunity to exploit Jews, to turning into their paternal protector. Even E.T., I claim. What happens really in E.T.? Remember that in the first scene you learn that the family is, that the father abandoned the family. This is absolutely crucial. So, E.T. is for me just a kind of a vanishing mediator. Remember the last scene where finally that Yoda-esque creep called E.T. goes home. Do you remember that all the scientists are bad? The one who is the good one already, check it up, has his hands over the mother's shoulder. So again, paternal authority, family is re-established, and so on and so on. So, in spite of all these problems, and there are other mega problems, for example, no, we will have time. Now let's do it properly. Like, for me, the lowest point of Schindler's List is that Spielberg wasn't able to resist the temptation to depict the very point when Schindler, like, discovers his mission, turns into a good father. You remember that famous, for me, I'm sorry to tell you, too kitschy scene when he's on that small hill above the Krakow ghetto on a horse in the morning ride. He observes the German units, SS units, special units penetrating the ghetto, and that famous, in a black and white film, the small girl in red and so on. And that you see, for me, it's something, now I will talk, radical atheist, almost in theological terms. This kind of conversions in good, in evil, they should remain a mystery at some level. There is something obscene, blasphemous for me in depicting them too. You know, it's as if Spielberg here makes one step into a direction of which the lowest point is maybe, did you see with Ed Harris, Pollock? It's not a totally bad film, but one scene, death penalty for me. Namely, do you remember how they couldn't resist depicting the moment when this action painting is discovered? Of course, it's the usual stupidity, like kind of a bottle of color, totally drunken Ed Harris, Pollock, hits it, it turns over, and then, that's it. Like, they couldn't resist it. That's obsession. But nonetheless, back to Schindler's List, something he did there is correct. What? The way he there focused on an exception. Why? I think that it is precisely by presenting a German who did something to help the Jews that you get over the implication that it was possible to do something, and thus effectively to condemn those who did nothing, claiming it was totalitarian regime, nothing could have been done. So Spielberg, I think, was correct there to focus on exception. In United 93, I claim, on the contrary, the focus on the rebellion serves the purpose of precisely preventing us to ask this truly pertinent question. That is to say, let me indulge in a simple mental experiment. Let me imagine both films, United 93 and World Trade Center, with the same type of change. Let's imagine a film called, instead of United 93, American 11. That is to say, about one of the other flights where there was no redemptive moment of rebellion, they all died. Or let us imagine the same World Trade Center, only no solution at the end, they die, both of the policemen. Now, what's my point here? It's that far from in any way justifying or showing an understanding for the terrorist attacks and so on, such a version would have confronted us with the true horror of the situation. No, that would be the encounter of what was so terrifying. This would have made us to raise the true questions. The second feature, both films, I hope you notice this, restrain not only from taking a political stance about the events, but even from depicting their larger political contexts. Neither the passengers of United 93 flight nor the policemen in World Trade Center have any kind of a grasp on the full picture. All of a sudden, they find themselves thrown into a terrifying situation and have to make the best out of it. Now, this lack of what Fred Jameson would have called cognitive mapping is crucial. Both films depict ordinary people affected by the sudden, brutal intrusion of history, this invisible real that hurts, history with capital H, of course. All we see are the disastrous effects. So that, now I come to my point. Are you aware that, for example, in the case of World Trade Center, one can easily imagine exactly the same film, just we learn at the beginning that instead of the terrorist attack, what caused the collapse of the Twin Towers would have been, I don't know, some earthquake, some explosion of oil there or whatsoever. You can imagine